autonomy for unmanned systems. So what does that mean? That just means we make drones smart. So we do build our own drones. We're building them here in College Park, in fact, and have really enjoyed the journey, although the journey has been quite a roller coaster, as all of our today panelists will probably attest to. So that's a little bit about me and a little bit about what we're up to on the business side. I'd love to hear from all of our panelists. So I'm going to start with Vlad here, who's just on the screen to my right, and we're going to do a little bit of it. So Vlad, one thing I will say, I know a little bit of fun facts about each of these gentlemen that are on the call today. Vlad did something that I thought I was going to do, which was he was the first, I think, Vlad, you can correct me if I'm wrong, first graduate to have a simultaneous degree in engineering and business. That's amazing. Not easy to do, I can attest to, with just having an engineering degree as an undergrad. So Vlad, I'm going to turn it over to you. Tell us a little bit about your Terp journey and then your entrepreneurial journey.
So yeah, I think you're right on that stat. I think somebody else had an arrow in econ, so it was like pretty close. But as far as technically speaking, engineering and business, I think I was the first with a MECE and a operations degree. I did that because when I graduated high school, I tried to find the career that would earn the most, which was a terrible way to approach your career. And at the time, it was investment banking and hedge funds. This was 2005, 2006 as I was starting school. And the clearest path there to stand out seemed to be, hey, combine engineering and business, and every hedge fund will want me to work for them. But then 2008 happened right before I graduated. I actually had a senior thesis project where I dug into hedge funds and everything they were doing to short the bad mortgage loans. And I just got so turned off from that industry. It was just like sucking money out of a zero-sum system. So completely changed my perspective on what I wanted to do with my career. And at the time, there really wasn't a startup scene in the DC area, but I had found a startup that was willing to hire somebody fresh out of undergrad. Worked there for about a year before I got enough of the startup itch to start my own company. Then I actually took on a real job for about a year to fund that first company. So I built a consulting shop and product studio called Darwin Apps, which is now a multi-million-dollar business and working with great clients like Audi and Seagate and AT&T. I believed pretty strongly early on in the idea of building an international team, hiring from anywhere, that talent is universal, opportunity is not. So that's how my first company was built. And then around 2015, I was in New York and I actually connected with another Terp grad. So another alum, Venkat Dinavahi. He graduated in 2010 with a computer science degree. He had also built a similar international software consulting company. So we both kind of saw the same thing where it's, hey, there's talent everywhere, but it's really difficult to find them, work with them, set up systems to work with them. It actually takes an average of 12 services or apps between two people working together, whether it's full-time or 5 hours or 10 hours or anything. And we thought, can we just consolidate that to one system? So that was the kind of insight that became Turtle. We first found our own freelancers, found our own clients, matched them together, used that to fund the development of our software, which is Turtle OS. Spent about 3 years building that. And then March of 2020, so right before the pandemic, we thought, hey, the software is far enough along where we should bring other teams and independents onto it to use it to work with their clients. I had a flight scheduled for New York. I was on the flight and had meetings with some top VCs in New York that we would have been very proud to work with. This was March 8th, I believe. By the time we landed, every single meeting either got canceled or moved to Zoom. COVID happened, just like perspectives totally changed, and VCs were not trying to make new bets or invest in new companies. They were trying to keep existing portfolio companies alive. So we had a pretty tough decision at the time. We were like, do we keep building the original business where we found our own clients and freelancers? That was a pretty high margin, more or less consulting business. Or do we do what we wanted to do with investment money and just go all in on Turtle OS? We did the latter. Without the funding, definitely came with its sacrifices, but today there are now 18 agencies that are using our software to work with their own clients. Our software and growth is better than ever. So I'm glad we did what we did, but it certainly would have been easier with that funding back in March, but COVID happens.
Awesome. Thank you, Vlad. So one question, was the name Turtle inspired because you guys are both
We
Terps?
keep that a bit of a trade secret.
Okay,
So,
awesome. Fair
yes,
enough.
yes, we both graduated from Maryland, but I will say that is not the primary reason that it's Turtle.
Okay, awesome. All right, Adam. So you know what it struck me about your background is that you were pretty high-end finance guy. You know, working for JMI Equity. They're a great firm, as you mentioned earlier, here in Baltimore. Really, probably could have had an amazing long career there if you had wanted to. So tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got into craft beer. And I wish we were in person because I would love to be sitting here having samples with you guys of your beer. So over to
Yes.
you, Adam.
Maybe next year. We get beer involved, but yeah. Thanks for having me here today, and excited to speak with this group. Yeah. So my name is Adam Benecsh, CEO, co-founder of Union Craft Brewing here in Baltimore. I was born and raised in the Baltimore area. Spent my college years at College Park, which were great 4 years for me. Graduated college and got my first job entry level at a public accounting firm because my dad said you should become an accountant because you always have a job. And I think that was the last time I listened to him. But no, that provided a great fundamental business basis of what has shaken out as the rest of my career. But spent a few years in public accounting, realized that wasn't the right fit for me, and got a job at, as you mentioned, JMI Equity, a really great software-focused private equity firm here in Baltimore, and had a great 7 or 8 years there where I worked with incredible people, met amazing entrepreneurs, learned a lot about what made businesses successful and also what made businesses unsuccessful. And really, still to this day, try to focus on those lessons learned at my time at JMI and apply it to what my passion is now, craft beer here in and around Baltimore. And, you know, craft beer is a wonderful product and industry, and one that I have incredible passion for, and my team does. But when you really break it down, it's just like any other consumer product, and there's a lot of obviously thought and strategy and innovation that goes behind it. And leveraging all that knowledge that I was able to gain, you know, through the private equity phase of my career and applying it to beers has really been an exciting thing for me and our team to all do over these past 9 years. We're coming up on 9 years here at Union Craft Brewing, which is pretty awesome. So started the brewery here in the Hamden neighborhood of Baltimore. We brewed our first brews in 2012. And we're really excited that people loved our beers. And so we rode that momentum over the next several years into some rapid growth, which was great and challenging on its own. And in 2018, relocated to our new facility here in Baltimore called Union Collective. For anybody on the call that's in and around Baltimore, come on by. Would love to show you around. But what we created here was we took over a very old, once Sears warehouse here in Baltimore, at a very underutilized building here in Baltimore City, and converted it to what I call a modern day manufacturing center, which is now the home of us, a 50,000 square foot brewery, a Charmery ice cream factory, Event Coffee Roasters, Baltimore Spirits Distillery, the Wine Collective, Baltimore's first ever winery. And what we really wanted to do is combine a bunch of smart, growing businesses under one roof that really cared about the community that supported them, and kind of did things the right way. And so all the businesses here are really focused on adding to the community, whether it's jobs, whether it's a community center for meeting, making space for nonprofits to have space to raise money or do volunteer drives, really find ways to both give to the community and be a community center for the people that live and work around us. All of us are really interested in opening the doors to our business, letting people in, see how we make our product, whether it's taking a brewery tour, an ice cream factory tour, learning how coffee is roasted. We really love the idea of providing a little bit more detail on how our products are made, how we come up with our products, how we sell them, how we love to enjoy them, and everything in between. So definitely looking forward to continued growth here. This past year has been an incredible challenge for us in our industry due to COVID, which we can spend more time talking on through this panel.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Sid. So Sid is joining us today from India, so it's kind of late for him. Thanks for staying awake, Sid. He also has quite an interesting journey. He's been worked at big companies like Cisco, and he's worked for startups, gone through the whole acquisition cycle. And now, what you do is really interesting with the blockchain technology, but most of us don't quite understand that. So looking forward to hearing how your journey and what you do now. Sid.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, Pramod. So, yeah, after I graduated, I got a job in the Bay Area, California. Worked at Cisco, but the experience was quite useful. Although I was working for a big company, my role was primarily focused around new technologies. So I was I was tasked to look at new technologies that are coming out, understand how those would create impact to the product lines that we had, and build new product features. So that was a very interesting experience. It got me involved with a bunch of startups in the Bay Area, and also helped me build some very strong partnerships. And then I switched jobs, but even in the new company, it was a similar role, kind of like a product management role, building new products. So which was always a very interesting thing. So after a couple of switches, then I moved back to India. When I moved back, I moved back to a place called Hyderabad. The interesting fact about this city is it's a big pharma hub. Nearly 30% of the global pharmaceutical drugs, all sorts of drugs are manufactured here in this one city. So it's a huge volume, a huge concentration of pharma companies. So I got involved with them, trying to understand how they make them, distribute them, sell them, which was an interesting, because coming from like Bay Area, only dealing with technology companies, this was completely different uh, scene where we're dealing with manufacturing and pharmaceutical manufacturing in particular. So that's how I got started the company, primarily to solve the supply chain challenges, because these pharma companies had no clue where their products are getting sold. There was just a lot of counterfeiting in the supply chains. There are product wastages that's happening at several different points in the supply chain. So I started the company to solve some of those challenges, leverage a couple of new technologies, blockchain, Internet of Things, to create visibility and transparency into the supply chains. But and The lucky part is I focused on it. On a very particular product line to begin with, which is vaccines. Back then, vaccines were boring, only used by parents to get their children vaccinated, right? So not a mainstream product. But we got good validation by large players in the vaccines world, UNICEF, Gavi, they funded us, mentored us in 2019 and 2020. The pandemic came into picture. Early days, it was not clear. I mean, the vaccine's role was not obviously clear at the time, but suddenly, I think the vaccines became priority, and they started coming out in the December 2020. So that's when we got really busy. Working with a lot of governments and a lot of vaccine companies to deploy our solution and scale it.
Very cool. Awesome. That's great to hear. So we're going to jump around a little bit now. I think COVID affected everybody in different ways. It's, when you start a company, there's always going to be this roller coaster and of peaks and valleys. But I think there was probably nothing like that had ever happened like the pandemic. That was probably the ultimate. And if we can get through that, I think we can get through anything. So, Adam, I wanted to ask you. So, with the type of business you're in, I saw a couple of things. One, businesses just suffered, and two, businesses got creative, and three, I don't know, the trends showed me that people probably drank more too. So you tell us what the truth is.
Yeah, somewhere in between is normally the truth, and I think that's the case here. COVID, as I mentioned, had a significant impact on our business. Prior to COVID, our business was essentially made up of three buckets. A third of our business was selling canned six packs to beer stores around Maryland and DC and Virginia. A third of our business was selling kegs to bars and restaurants, and a third of our business was selling beer in our tap room. And as soon as COVID shut everything down, 2/3 of our business model went literally to zero. And so right away our revenue was down, 70-ish%, which tough punch to weather. As you mentioned, no one was expecting 2020 to go into a global pandemic that shut down everything and changed the world. But that's where we were. And when we talk about resiliency and pivoting, as an entrepreneur, you kind of don't have a choice. You need to, or you don't. We obviously recognize that and found ways to pivot to adjust over time. Things like creating a curbside pickup, not just for us, but for the other 8 businesses in Collective, really proved to be an outstanding way for us all to help weather the storm. What we set up was a way that you can order online anything that was manufactured here at the Union Collective. Again, beer, coffee, ice cream, whiskey, wine, a few other things from friends around Baltimore. And that really resonated with people because obviously as a consumer, consumption of these products didn't really change that much. I can speak to alcohol. Overall consumption stayed relatively flat. It didn't go up. There was a little bit of pantry loading early on in COVID, just like toilet paper. People were wondering if they were going to be able to leave the house again and stocked up a couple cases rather than a 6-pack. But that went away pretty quickly. With consumption, we realized consumption levels weren't really changing. It's how you got the product to people is what changed. And so we set up our curbside pickup area where people could drive up. We delivered to their car if they wanted to, where they could come in and grab it. And we took it a step further, and with some temporary that are now more permanent law changes, we were able to deliver beer. And so we started actually a beer delivery service, which if you would have asked me 2 years ago, would you ever consider delivering beer? I would have never considered delivering beer. Our business relies on our actual customers are the beer stores that buy our beer that then people go to and buy from. We would never want to compete with them. But that changed during COVID when even our beer stores that I would talk to and ask if this is okay, they were supportive of it because they didn't have the infrastructure to do it. And they knew that people were trying to look for different ways to get the products they wanted. So pivoting like that, creating a way for people to get what they wanted in a more easy manner became critical to us, and came up with different ways to do that through curbside, through delivery. Later in COVID, we reconfigured our outdoor space to create an outdoor beer garden so that people could come by in a safe way and enjoy a pint with some friends or after work or whatever the case may be. And we found that really resonated again with consumers because there weren't a lot of places you could go do that. And COVID was tough on everybody, not just us as businesses, but the mental state of the community members. We wanted to, again, create space for people to experience things in an otherwise environment where you couldn't. And that was a really special thing for us to do, and took a couple iterations to get right, but finally got right and saw the benefits of that and the enjoyment from the community from it.
Awesome. Thank you. So Vlad, when you described your business, what I was thinking about was this sort of now remote work from home, a lot of businesses that are, expanding their networks and becoming more hybrid when prior to COVID, they might not have been that way. Sounds like you embraced that back in 2005 or so. You saw that happening and you didn't see any reason not to have talent from around the world. If you don't mind, maybe, you also described the strategy decision you had to make at the beginning of COVID. So I guess really, what I'm getting at is here, if you could sort of describe the major strategy decisions you had to make, like what was that like a crisis to you in your business? And did you feel like, hey, it's either make or break, or just kind of expand on that just a little bit?
So first I'll start with the remote thing. Yeah, we embraced that pretty early, but that started way earlier than that. I guess I've been not at this employer for long enough where I can say it, but while I was in college, 2007 to 2009, there was a lot of times that I was a developer at a large marketing database company in the DC area. And I was at school at the time. I whipped up my laptop and put in a few hours here and there while I was in classes or between classes. And that was just, very early on, it just showed me there are specific jobs that can be done through an internet connection and a computer. And there is no good reason why those people should have to be button seat workers. That doesn't apply to every job. Like, after Adam was done talking, all I can think about is enjoying a a beer at the brewery. And you can't recreate those experiences digitally, but I think COVID forced us to really think about what experiences we can recreate digitally. Even with us as a remote team, I get together, my co-founder right now, even though we were both in New York and are from the area, he's in South America right now, just living a very nomadic life. We get together about once a quarter. You can't replace those things. But I think there were a lot of doubts with remote work before. I think a lot of companies pushed in-office work for the wrong reasons. If you ever sense that your employer is pushing it for control instead of what's best for employees and for the business, I would look elsewhere for employers. But there are companies where you simply need to interact regularly, either once or 3 times, or sometimes every day. And then the strategic decisions we made. So we had been a bootstrap company before. That's kind of all I've known as an entrepreneur. My first business, we didn't raise any money and grew that into a multi-million-dollar business with Turtle before we had launched Turtle OS. So it was turtle.dev, where we had vetted our own freelancers, matched them to our own customers. We had also grown that into a multi-million-dollar business. So all I kind of knew was building a bootstrap business, but I knew that there was something bigger in the software that we were building and the opportunity to just make it much easier for any independent team to have the full stack of tools they need to work with a client. I mean, everything from project management, chat, contracts, payments. Just there's so much friction between 2 people working together when you start stacking all those tools up, especially for remote kind of fractional. What I mean by fractional is maybe hiring somebody for 10 hours a week for those experiences. So I definitely saw the opportunity, and at the time, I got some investors excited about the opportunity. So I was really excited about being able to put that capital into building our software faster, getting more agencies on board faster, and continuing to grow our existing business. When kind of VCs shut their doors to new opportunities when COVID hit, we knew that we would have the tailwind of, hey, people are going to stop treating remote as an afterthought, remote work and online work as an afterthought, but we also didn't have the capital that we were expecting to put into this. So we were faced with, we essentially had to put energy entirely off of our original business, which was turtle.dev, and put it all into Turtle OS. So instead of adding a focus, which was our initial intention, we had to entirely shift focus, which did hit our revenues, or at least our margins. One was a much higher margin business where we're controlling everything and vetting everyone, and they're essentially our own freelancers, versus other teams are simply getting a platform to run their own business. It's a totally different business model with much smaller margins, but we saw a much larger opportunity there. So we kind of took the tailwinds of COVID and how it was uplifting remote, and balanced that with the fact that we didn't have a few $1 million that we were expecting to put into new software. And so, okay, let's consolidate our resources, which I think is just a critical lesson to keep relearning. I think if everything is important, nothing is important. And with large companies and with well-funded companies, it's very easy to do a lot of things well. But if you really look at the great companies that just shifted the world, Uber, you can press a button and get a car. They all kind of focused on one thing done really, really well, and just nothing else mattered. And I think what happened with COVID really reiterated the importance of prioritization to us and just really focusing on one thing done well. And it just forced our entire team to really rally around, okay, our customer is no longer the person who's hiring an engineering team or engineers. Our customer is now that team that's actually being hired, or that independent that's being hired, that has to deal with freelancer marketplaces that might not treat them fairly, or agencies that might take a massive percentage, or just a lack of tools and infrastructure for being able to deliver their services in an easy way. And we just totally shifted our customer focus, and I don't want to say neglected the other side, but we definitely prioritized this new vision and making sure our software was built for the people doing the work instead of the people necessarily hiring the work. There's enough people focused on the big companies and small companies with credit cards ready to hire someone. There really weren't that many focused on the other sides, the people and teams performing the work.
Okay. Very good. So we've got a few minutes left before we go to Q&A here and turn it over to Mary for fielding the questions. However, so now we're going to do a little bit of lightning round. I'm just going to hop around with you guys. And I'm first going to say that there's actually a definition for entrepreneurial resilience, and that is that it's a form of emotional and cognitive ability that is useful for the entrepreneur, particularly when bouncing back after failures. connected to their entrepreneurial entity or journey, what have you. So we'll start with you, Sid. So I would love, one of the things that's really important as entrepreneurs is how you go about your day, how you stay positive, all those kind of things. So Sid, give the audience one item or one, sort of a piece of advice on, and really just from your experience, how you stay positive. I know things are tough in India right now as a whole, right? And in general, but how do you stay positive?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a good question. So, so I try to balance. I have a family. I have a kid of 2-year-old kid who keeps me busy, and so that is a good distraction. On the business side, what I've tried to do, even during the pandemic, is to keep my business always cash flow positive. So that kind of takes a lot of burden away from the stress of running the business. So that's the, like, at least one of my focus areas, to always keep cash flow positive on the business side, and that automatically builds a lot of resilience into the business.
Awesome, thank you. That's yeah, cash flow. It's super important. And Vlad mentioned the whole bootstrap thing. That's probably a whole nother panel in itself, is bootstrapping. But Adam, how do you sort of relax and manage the stress? I imagine when you had 2/3 of your revenue go away, like overnight, that had to be very stressful. So how do you, what kind of advice can you give to somebody, again, just based on your experience, not general advice, but what you do specifically to manage your stress?
Yeah, thinking back to those times, they were certainly scary times, but it was kind of one foot in front of the other, and it comes down to paying attention and understanding your business, and understanding who you're selling to, what you're selling. That realization I spoke to about consumption staying flat. It's how do you get it to them? That was a big thing for us to see the data and realize, and then react to. And so it's really, I'm a very data-driven person personally. Love looking at data, love understanding what the numbers really tell you, specifically in our business, and then being smart and making good decisions around that data. And there's always a gut call. There's always intuition, which is a big part of being an entrepreneur and being a successful or unsuccessful entrepreneur. Knowing when to trust your gut, knowing when to trust the data, and most of the time it's somewhere in between. And putting great people around you to help through all of that, and weed through the details that maybe will get in your way of making the right decision. But trusting your gut and trusting the data to do what's right.
All right. And Vlad, one of the things I think that's really important is routines. Can you share any knowledge, again, not generic, something you actually do on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, whatever it is, that is a part of your routine that helps you stay positive, helps you always move forward, whatever it is?
It's a good question. The weather got really nice outside. This has been more recent, but almost every morning I go outside with an iPad, and instead of, oh man, I got to go start calls and all that, I get to go outside and I get to go plan my day, and I get to prioritize what I'm doing today. So I've been doing that pretty regularly when it's nice out. And I kind of repeat that not only on a daily basis, but on a monthly basis. Our entire team kind of rallies and makes sure to make our priorities crystal clear. On a quarterly basis, we do the same thing. On an annual basis, we do the same thing. So we kind of practice these annual, quarterly, and monthly resets where we just make sure our P1s, our priorities are crystal clear.
Awesome. So for everybody listening in, I'm sure you heard lots of good tidbits here. I'm going to highlight a couple. One is, if everything is important, nothing is important. We just heard also that the truth is somewhere between the data and your gut. It's probably true in most entrepreneurial circumstances. And then we also heard morning routine. So definitely important to have a morning routine that get you off to a right foot for the day. And I'll end before we go to Q&A here, and we can certainly have plenty more conversation in the Q&A, but I'll end with, no matter what happens on your, in your business or in your entrepreneurial journey, keep calm and carry on. All right. I'm going to turn it over to Mary. If you want to field questions, Mary, and all of us will be happy to answer.
Sure. So feel free to start filling up the chat box with your questions. So the first one we have here is someone is asking about advice for starting a business when they're selling services like a coaching practice and not a physical product. And we can popcorn around, or whoever wants to start it off first.
I'll go ahead and start that one. I think the most important thing there is not knowing much about your business. The more you can have process and turn over a business. I think the question was around selling, correct, Mary? Yeah, I mean, the more you can have a process around everything you do, the more somebody's going to feel comfortable that they can take this business and run it without you. There's a great book out there. It's called Built to Sell by John Werlow. And I would say read that book, follow what their advice is, and you could set your business up in such a way that it's going to be desirable to others. And I'll turn it over to whoever else wants to add to that.
All right. If not, we can move on. So what are some challenges that you have faced during the scaling process? And then how did you overcome that?
Yeah, I can chime in on that. You know, for us, scaling was making more beer, selling beer further away from Baltimore, and scaling in that way. And growth is hard, and we suffered. You know, growth is, as an entrepreneur, as a business person, you're always looking for, planning for, and chasing growth for the most part. And something I realized 3-4 years in is, you know, growth shouldn't be your number one factor, your top prioritization. It needs to be a consideration in all the things that you do, if that's what your business model is set up for. But it's not purely just growing. And I learned that through experience that pure growth can be challenging and detrimental in some ways. And if you don't grow in the right way, if you're growing just to grow, you're not going to get to where you want to be. You need to have smart growth, practical growth, and sustainable growth. You don't want to grow 100% for 2 years and then not be able to grow beyond that. And so really setting up, scaling your business in a way for long-term success and long-term manageable growth, for us at least, proved to be the right path, or the more manageable path for me, and is what we're set on, versus, hey, selling everything we can sell, let's just make more beer, let's hire more people. Then some of your core values and mission get a little bit diluted when you're chasing growth that rapidly.
Yeah. Ours is a little easier, so I'll jump in. We basically do something manually and then replace it with software process. So ours is a little more cookie cutter. We look at the things that are bringing the highest value, taking the most time, and are at least somewhat automatable. So ours is a little more cookie cutter than that.
Yeah, one of the things that I was focusing on is scaling while remaining lean. So that is, so the reason for that is it reduces, it keeps your team small, and you have less things to worry about from a people management perspective. So at the same time, growing at the same at whatever rate that your investors want you to. So one of the things that I did is build good channel partners. So I have very strong channels that bring in a lot of our inbound leads, and they also help us with program management, handling the relationship with the clients. So it makes it a little bit easier to scale from that perspective. So, and luckily, I mean, it doesn't eat into our margins. We can still keep our margins the same while having these channel partners, because they sell at a higher margin to the clients. So it works out well, and still helps us to scale.
So when it comes to B2B sales and marketing, which channels do you think are the most worth it? And then part 2 of this question is, how do you continue to market during financial scarcity? As everyone knows, when you look at budgets, when it's time to cut things, marketing is usually on the table first.
We don't have any marketing at all, zero budget for many years. A lot of marketing, because we had this social impact angle. We got a lot of free press, made some good news. Because I was getting vaccinated, so we got a lot of good press and a lot of inbound leads that we could leverage. So, I mean, marketing is not always necessary. It depends on, I mean, for B2B, I mean, since this question is around B2B, you can do well, at least in your initial early stages without a lot of marketing spend. I think if you focus that on building right channel partners who can get you that client meeting that you want to, so I think that saves you a lot of money.
I'd say dissect marketing into kind of its subparts. I think a lot of times people grow a business and they think, okay, marketing is how we grow sales and how we do everything related to growth. In reality, it breaks down to things like, okay, there's marketing, which is being able to talk about your business and explain it in very simple and compelling ways. There's sales, which is actually going to potential clients. There's customer happiness and satisfaction, which is how are they going to talk about you to other customers. There's building those personal relationships with different channel partners and all. And I think they're all different subparts of marketing where when we put them under this umbrella, it becomes very difficult and overwhelming versus if you can focus on what makes most sense for you as a team and what skills you're good at, what's your market and your business and what kind of areas that in. Like we combine some traditionally disconnected businesses. So it's been very hard for us to brand in a very simple, compelling way. So instead we focused on how can we get our customers and the teams that are on the platform to tell others about their experiences. And that kind of ended up being our growth channel.
Yeah, and for us, we break marketing into two buckets as a brewery. There's brand marketing, building brands, and there's field marketing, getting people to choose our beer versus somebody else's in the beer store. And think of those, while it's all connected, they're very different, and the tactical piece of it all, of each of those is very different. For us, social media is so huge to build our brands, to let consumers know about what's coming out new or what's their old-time favorite that's around all the time, and showing them how much fun it is to have that in their hand or whatever the case may be. And then when you're talking about field marketing, for us, we're non-COVID times doing tastings, doing events, but during COVID had to get really creative in how to do that, especially as a lot of beer stores in our area at least weren't letting people in the store early days. And we saw things like Duckpin Pale Ales, our flagship brand, our most well-known brand, that when those sales went through the roof, because if you're not able to walk the store and peruse the shelves and find something you like, you kind of go with what you're used to. And we took that as an opportunity to grow that brand, our flagship brand, during a very weird time where we weren't particularly focused on growth, we were focused on survival, but found that as an opportunity to be able to find some growth in that specific brand.
Awesome. So how do you know if entrepreneurship is the right career path for you? Do you suggest a plan B if the startup doesn't work?
I can jump. It was so easy for me. I hated having a real job. It's probably my own issue, but I hated having someone else tell me how to do things and what to prioritize. It just never sat right with me. I'd much rather make my own mistakes, even if they are mistakes, or be the contributor to my own success versus having somebody else tell me how to spend my time. I didn't have to do any digging. That just came out so clearly. I would just caution financially, you make way less money starting your own company for a very long time. So just be aware of that and balance that with any kind of hate for the corporate world or being involved there. So, for me, the benefit of not working for somebody and what that did to my productivity and mental health and all that compared to the potential future of entrepreneurship, like I took that risk and we'll see. We're 10 years in and I still think it's a we'll see sort of thing.
I'll jump in on that one too. I think I'll do the second part of the question, which is, what if it doesn't work out piece. So I'm a big book guy. I'll give you another book recommendation that'll give you some insight on how to think through this, which is it's a book called Built to Last by Jim Collins, and in there they talk about what makes a company great versus good or versus not good. And I think if you sort of have one sort of approach, which is, hey, we're going to do this, and if it doesn't happen, we're not going to do it. That's probably the wrong approach. I think you have to really think about it like, what's your long-term goal, and just, there's going to be a lot of things that don't work out. You kind of get used to rejection. You get used to, anybody here that's raised money, which I think all of us have probably done some of that to some extent, you just get used to rejection. If you apply for proposals with the government, you get used to rejection, and you just keep going. So I think that my answer is probably not really an answer. It's just, you gotta just be resilient and just like fall down. You got to get up more than you fall down. That's the bottom line.
And I think it's even more important as an entrepreneur, how you react and adjust to the no's rather than the successes is really a true sign of entrepreneurship and longer term success, at least from my experience.
And then Adam, we have a question specifically for you. This person is an accounting major who hates working in accounting. So thinking about taking that leap and starting their own business. So they're kind of wondering if you can talk a little bit about your transition and then what lessons you took for working for that firm before starting your own business.
Yeah, and I'll say, similar to what Vlad said, it wasn't a huge stretch for me. I started in accounting for 3 or 4 years, learned a lot of really great things. I met a lot of great people, but I knew it wasn't for me, and I just didn't fit into the working in this corporate environment with this chain of command that sometimes worked, sometimes didn't. And I kind of always had this entrepreneurial spirit. And so that's kind of what led me to the private equity firm, and kind of trying to tap into that a little bit, but still in a much less so corporate setting, and certainly paid you a lot more than you make owning a brewery even. But it comes down to life goals and mental health and happiness, and realized that I was probably young 30s, 33, 34 at that time, and the time was right to take that leap. And it was certainly a leap, leaving a nice paying job and a support system that was very comfortable. But for some people, myself included, it just didn't feel right. And I knew that at 33 years old, this isn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And set out on that path and raised money. A brewery is a capital intensive business. There's a lot of big equipment and upfront costs. Raised some money from a lot of my Terp network, people that I went to school with, people that I went to high school with, people that I tailgated Ravens games with, is where all capital came from. It's a relationship business that I'm in, and most businesses aren't that different. That it comes down to just connecting with people, sharing your passion, and if you get that cross section right, you can really do amazing things depending on what you're passionate about. I'd say chasing your passion a little bit, or finding work in your areas that you're passionate about, makes working a lot more, I don't want to say easy, but easy to get motivated for. Whereas I remember in public accounting, and even some days at private equity, it was hard to get to work that day, or hard to get motivated to do what you needed to do, and that motivation sometimes wasn't there. Finding something that you're passionate about and chasing that, and finding a way to, whether it's start a business or have a career in that area that you're passionate about, for me, goes a really long way.
So I know we mentioned a few book recommendations, but someone is asking, do you have any book, or I'll add podcast recommendations on resiliency or mental toughness?
Yeah, I put one in the chat. It's called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. It's a good one. There's a lot of them, but that's one that stands out for me.
I recently read a book, not business focused, The Master Plan by Chris Wilson. Amazing story. The guy in DC in his younger life actually killed someone, went to jail for 20 years, wrote a master plan, got out of jail. Now New York Times bestseller, amazing artist, selling artwork that I know I can't afford, but doing really great things in and around Baltimore, DC, and New York. Great book if anybody wants to check that out.
This one's totally not a business book, but on resilience, I think resilience is about perspective. Just like, do you really have it so bad? Is it, are you really in a bad spot? There's a book written by a psychologist who was in a concentration camp during World War II. and just, I can't remember the name, but if you Google like World War II concentration camp psychologist, I'm sure it'll come up. And you just put into perspective, just, I mean, how horrible dealing with that, but people adjust. And even in those horrible times, he dealt with it. So I don't know, anytime I deal with something, I'm just like, I don't have it anywhere nearly as bad. And then 2 books on the business side that I would recommend any entrepreneur read. High Output Management by the founder of Intel, just on managing people. I think it's, whether it's managing yourself, people, your own processes, I think it's an incredible read that any founder or entrepreneur can learn from. And then a more recent book, and I think Teresa just said in the comments that the book I was mentioning, it was Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And then the other business book, a more recent one by Netflix, is Founder No Rules Rules. I think it's just an incredible perspective on hiring and kind of how you treat people and how you vet for the right people and the kind of culture that you set at your company. I thought it was an incredible read, and everybody on our exec team has read it since.
And there is actually a podcast. It's called the Resilient Entrepreneur Podcast. So, FYI.
So I know you briefly mentioned this before. If someone's wondering what is the best thing you did in the past year to take care of your mental health, and I'm also interested to hear of how you kind of kept your employees motivated, took care of their mental health, some things you did to keep people motivated.
Yeah, that was a challenge.
Yeah, I can.
Go ahead.
No, Adam, go ahead. I'll go after you.
Okay, sure. Certainly a challenge for us and everybody going through the past year was maintaining mental health and doing what we could to do so. One thing we did a bunch of stuff. One thing that stuck out, and I think we'll live through COVID, we use Slack for all of our internal communications here, and we created a Slack channel just called Daily Gratitude, where all of our employees had access to it, and a lot of people got behind it, just dropping 3 things you're grateful for that day. Most of the time it's not related to work. Sometimes it was. Very few comments, chatter about it. It was just a depository of what are you grateful for today? And we saw an outpouring of participation in that still lives through to today, which has been great. And it's something that I practice in my private life a little bit, but to take that to the broader group of our team here was a pretty cool thing to do. And the fact that it stuck and people have found enjoyment and from it is pretty awesome.
One of our team members, Venkat and I, can kind of be a little by the books and a little too business focused all the time. Somebody on our team actually started a weekend gaming night where we would play. At the time, like Among Us was getting really popular, so we started playing that. That turned into a bunch of team members got Oculus VR headsets, so we started having VR game sessions on the weekends. Just something to brighten up the days and connect people beyond just the day-to-day work, even if the day-to-day work can be fun and enjoyable.
And for me, I like to get outside every day, work out. That just keeps things, and again, do what I think it's everybody's different. So do what you enjoy, figure out what that is, and then see if you can do it more as much as you can.
Okay, for us, I think we had a very bad year. A few employees got sick, and we had one intern. His mother passed away because of COVID. So I would be lying that we're doing everything to help everyone recover. I think it's a long path for complete recovery. I think, but I think, to be really honest, we don't necessarily have all answers to figure out how to help everyone on the team or help people that you know personally. But I think just taking baby steps, trying to just stay connected, keep things positive, and stay focused, I guess. So yeah, that's it's been tough time, and don't really have at least in terms of clarity what would help us completely recover out of this thing. I think it's a difficult and long path ahead.
I will say I started fostering dogs in the past year. And so that's definitely helped my mental health. I do have one mastiff right now. If anyone's looking for a dog, I'll put that plug in greatly improves your life, adds a lot more stress, but I think it's good stress.
Dogs are the best.
Yes.
The dog just through COVID, and we're so grateful to have that dog through COVID. It was amazing.
Yes. Dogs, cats, fish. A lot of people got fish. Awesome. So I think I got to all of the questions. We have a few more minutes left. I'm not sure if any of the panelists wanted to ask kind of final questions of each other. No pressure.
Adam, can you get your beer in New York?
You can't. I was up there this week. Brother lives there, so I bring him beer a lot. So I'll have to connect you. But
Okay. Let me know next time you come up, or the once you get it in some New York stores.
yeah, we distribute Mid-Atlantic, so Maryland, DC, Northern Virginia, and Delaware. And we'll probably get into Southern Pennsylvania in the coming year or so, but don't have plans to really grow much beyond that. I think we can do a lot more in our home market than we can in the outer markets. And my brother keeps saying to come to New York, so maybe it can happen.
I mean, the whole, like, it feels like a European city now. Like all the street parking has been converted to outdoor restaurants and breweries. It's really something. Yeah, like things have really turned around.
It was great to be there this weekend and see it active. I was there earlier in COVID and it was not active, but to see it coming back is pretty exciting. I think one of our beers is in the Hall CP. I saw that in the comments. I think our Steady Eddie is on tap there, right there. We did a beer for my favorite Oriole of all time, Eddie Murray, which I think stays on tap for the most part at the Hall. But I'll double check on that to make sure you have it.
Awesome. And one final thing before we close out. Thank you, Sammy. The University of Maryland does have a platform for a ton of resources, documents, all of that. So it's the Innovation Gateway, and you can find it. It's innovate.umd.edu. So super easy to find for that. So thank you to all of our panelists today. This was a great session. If you missed some of it or want to go back and listen, this session was recorded and will be posted later on today. So this afternoon, hopefully you'll have the chance to visit our resource fair that goes from 2 to 5, and that's on the conference platform, where you can network with your fellow Terp entrepreneurs and investors and advisors. So that'll be a great opportunity to kind of connect with one another online. And then we still have a full day for you tomorrow. We have 3 sessions on cultural competency, interviewing some student to founder, sharing those stories. And then we will close out the conference with kind of a roundtable with our Chief Innovation Officer at UMD, Julie Lenzer. So we're not done yet, still got a full day ahead of us. But again, thank you to all of our panelists for this great session.
Mary, Christine, and the alumni team, thanks for having us. Pramod, thanks for hosting. And thanks for all the audience members that joined and you took an hour out of your day to be here with us. Really appreciate it.
Really, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.